Hey, beautiful souls, and welcome to Around the Kitchen Table, a space for honest conversations, stories from the heart, and gentle reminders that we're all walking each other home. I'm Laura Island, mother, creative, soul-led CEO of Sacred Sister CIC, and the woman behind Wise Sacred Woman. I'm a witch with ADHD, and this podcast is where we gather to share the real, raw and radiant parts of life. Each week, we'll explore what it means to live in rhythm with ourselves, with nature and with one another. We'll talk about womanhood, sisterhood, creativity, leadership, spirituality, and the messy magic of being a human. So pour yourself a cuppa, get comfy, and let's meet here around the kitchen table, where stories are medicine and every voice belongs. Good morning, good morning. I hope you are all well. Welcome to Around the Kitchen Table, where I am actually around my kitchen table for a change, which is really lovely. And I have a friend with me. I'm going to share a bit more with you about her in a moment. But why don't we just stop and just take a breath for a moment? Obviously, if it's safe for you to do so, close your eyes and just land in your body, because today I know that this conversation is going to bring you back home to yourself. So I am sharing this morning with my lovely friend Natalie, and she has I don't even like calling them businesses. She has a passion and web pages and Instagram, and I'll put all of the links and things here so you can find it, called Rewild and Rise. And I invited her around to have a chat with you around the kitchen table. So I am going to just do this. Ding, 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 ding. Welcome to my kitchen table. It's pretty epic. What have you got in your cup? What are you drinking?
I am drinking, I can't remember what
wasn't it Radiance? Aren't you on Radiance?
I'll take a cup of Radiance.
Yeah, absolutely. She said anything with fennel is good for me. So there we go. That's very right. So we were just sat kind of going, what are we going to talk about today? And the whole point of Around the Kitchen Table was always just to have these extraordinary conversations that we have as kind of normal for us, but actually often are different to the outside world would normally have. So yeah, where do we start? We were just talking about where did we meet, and I'm like, I can't remember, and you can't remember.
Genuinely can't remember where we first connected.
No, me neither. And I think there is that aspect of those people that you just know in life. I have lots of those in my life, and we just know each other. And but then you came and you did the circle training with us, which was really beautiful. And you're now out holding kind of women's circles and women's spaces. And I think when I think about the things that I know of you, there are so many threads that we could kind of talk about, so many rabbit holes that we could go down. But I think there's this real passion for me about sharing more about who you are, how you live your life with your beautiful extended family, what it's been to navigate your own sexuality and being who you are. There are so many threads.
That's a good place to start.
Should we start there?
Actually, I was thinking, and one of the really transformational things for me that is part of how we've met and part of our connection has been the transition from what I was doing before around sacred sexuality and connection to the earth. But actually, it was Sacred Sister where I cracked open in a beautiful circle that you held and was able to really work with my own wounding around women. And it was from there that actually Rewild and Rise must have grown, because before then I was absolutely adamant. I prefer working with men. My femininity balances out the masculine. And that was absolutely the path that I was sure I was taking. And it was actually in that moment that I can trace back and something cracked open. And from that, I dived in the way that we do and explored. And this is where Rewild and Rise grew from.
Wow.
So I do want to honor that first of all.
I love
before
that.
jumping into anything else.
Thank you.
Because it's so, that was a beautiful, beautiful space that you held. That was at one of your gatherings. the circle, the way that circle works, the magic that circle can bring, that one was particularly potent. And it was in being met and seeing myself in the faces of sisters that I realized actually what the wounding was. And from there went on a long journey of working with that, pushing the edges in the way that we do. And that's where we are now.
Sweet. Let's just hone in on that, like on that wounding, because actually there'll be women that listen to this, possibly men as well, but a lot of people don't really, we talk about the sister wound, we talk about it like it's just so natural, but actually so many people are lost in not even really understanding what that means. And we get so caught up in that life is those things are normal in life, but actually they have such an impact on us. So I wonder if you feel open to just sharing a little bit about, like, when you faced what you say are the wounds, what was that was coming up for you?
Yeah, so what it was that was coming up, and then maybe as well tracing back where it was from, because that was a big part of the journey, and that's a big part of the work that I do with women. I know that you do with women as well. For me, in that moment, it was a realization that I didn't feel safe with other women, and that I'd come into this field, and it was a beautiful place to be, and you can kind of explore parts of yourself, but often we are doing it from a place of protectedness. And there was a vulnerability around childhood trauma that I hadn't shared, but I also really particularly couldn't share with other women because I didn't feel safe. And I was worried that I wasn't good enough. I was worried that I was going to be seen to be less than. I was worried that I couldn't trust. So a lot of these themes come up a lot in our wounding. And it was actually the mirroring in that circle that was the most just kind of eye-opening thing for me. It was just actually, we're all putting on a front so often in our lives, and it's been beautiful to actually learn so much about it. But so often we are all putting on this front and kind of masking and going out into the world like, this is who I am, I've got this all. And we're kind of doing that swan thing where we're gliding across the surface some of the time and pedaling like fury underneath the surface. But actually, it was in the dropping of the veil where it was actually a realization we share so much. And I can be vulnerable here. And that was one of very profound in my healing journey, but also just realizing, okay, here is some of the wound, and this is what I want to work with. Does that answer the first part? Anything you want to add to that?
No, it absolutely does. I'm just going to do something very quickly though, because I realised that there's music playing over in the kitchen, and I think our Zoom is probably. I don't want it to be picking up anything weird, so I'm going to just pause this a second while I shout at Alexa. So we're back. I shouted at Alexa. We turned off the very relaxing music, which was beautiful, and is mostly there for to say that they don't get bothered by the neighbours or anybody else around. So yeah, no, I think it's beautiful and perfect. And so we just touched on like where those wounds come from, and like you were saying about tracing back, kind of like where those things come from. You talk about childhood trauma. I think that's one of the things that we can often get stuck in. It's like we get stuck in that place. And actually, for me, there's that realization, isn't it, of safety being a real inside job. It's like, actually, I can't look for that safety outside of myself. Safety has to come from that place inside where I trust myself enough to know that if anything happened, I'm okay and I've got myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful place. And I think I've really seen you grow in that kind of capacity of like, do you know what? I've got me and I'm all right, and whatever else happens. And I love watching the way that you've got to understand yourself so much around, your cycle, the ways that you need to look after yourself, coming out of kind of corporate world into kind of a different way of living.
Yeah.
And I think if I was to, don't take this the wrong way, if I was to think, she's like, oh shit,
Race.
Yep, that's how my friends view things with me. If I was to kind of think about the friends in my life that are living the most authentically themselves, you would be one of those people, because actually you've gone against the freaking grain in like so many ways and gone, no, actually, it's okay for me to just be who I am. And I know that's not been an easy journey necessarily, but it's one that you've been like, no, actually, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I wonder how it would be to
Thank
speak
you.
to speak to that.
Yeah. So what comes up from me when you say that is actually, I mean, that has been a huge part of my journey and it has been beautiful. And it's one of the things that I am so immensely grateful for now. And it's kind of the way that we dismantle systems and structures within and without. And that's actually a big part of what I do in my work. So whether it's through writing, whether it's through one-to-ones, groups, gatherings, that's part of it because we have been conditioned in so many different ways. We have these external structures, these ways that we've been given by our family or by society, these expectations of how we are, what we do. And in so many ways, we know that they are so broken. So these are broken systems and they damage, they cause a lot of harm. And so my own journey has been kind of the macro and the micro, where I've been internally dismantling these systems and structures and coming back again and again and again to who am I? What does this mean to me? Do I believe in this? What do I believe? What do I yearn for? What do I want? What's my knowing? And then dismantling that. So actually going, okay, well, if I don't believe in this, then why am I doing this? I need to just make sure that I'm staying true to me in kind of that pointing at your true north and continuing to walk in that direction. While simultaneously starting to dismantle some of those external structures that cause harm. So I'm a campaigner in my Myers-Briggs personality type. That's one of the things that I do, is that I see things that are causing harm and then I want to work with them. And I want to support in that way. So yeah, that's definitely been the path, and it hasn't been easy, but it's also been beautiful. And every step that you take along this path, you go, oh, actually, yeah, the world didn't fall down and I'm still here, and it gets easier and easier. So yeah, what magic.
Because I guess, you were like in your career, like you were in those broken systems, right? Like you saw it on
Yeah, very much.
on the kind of fun. I don't know how much you want to share about like where you'd come from. Like when we met, you were still very much in that kind of system.
I was working senior leadership in the charity sector, and I was in burnout cycle after burnout cycle after burnout cycle because it's kind of sticking plasters onto things. That's the problem, is that those systems are so needed because we do support people and you kind of see this need, but the way that they operate burns the people out within, and it's also just propagating the kind of like patriarchal capitalistic society that we have anyway. So we're kind of part of it, and that's not saying in any way that it's bad if people are in those roles, but for me it was a realization I couldn't do that anymore. It actually happened in a really beautiful way. So my family come from Dartmoor on my dad's side. Like literally our name is of the moor. And so it's a very sacred space for me. And there's a stone circle, and I found it probably about 5 years ago. And I was like, this is my home. I've walked this land before, even though I knowingly haven't been there in this lifetime. And I was there. It was snowy. It was beautiful. And there was just peace in this big clearing with this massive woods and the stone circle in the middle. And I was really struggling. So I was in another one of these kind of like, something wrong, something has to give. And I'd already done a lot of the dismantling that I was talking about in so many different ways. This one was big. And I stood in the circle and I just knew in my bones that I couldn't go back to what I was doing. And I think sometimes if we're lucky, we get these kind of messages and it's just like, okay, can't ignore that one. And this was one of those. And I just stood there and I realized that if I stepped out of the circle without being absolutely giving myself a guarantee that I would stop doing that thing, that I just knew I couldn't actually leave the circle until I was actually just going to promise myself, no, I need to leave. It's time to do this a really different way. And that's a big one, isn't it? Our work, our career, these are big messages that we've been given from so young in our family world, in our culture. These are really big ones. And I was doing good in the world as well. So I was following a path that I thought I was supposed to be following. I was working with women who've experienced domestic abuse and sexual harm, but it was just a knowing. And I made myself that promise and I left. So that was a really big piece. And with that, so much follows. So when I actually started to be able to work within my cycles, my rhythms, I was able to live in connection with the land in my way because I wasn't doing this commute, I wasn't doing this external pressure. Then so much opened from that moment.
Right. It's powerful. Like I sit and I hear you talk about it, and it's like that conditioning of like what we're supposed to do, right? Like this system that we've grown into. I think most people will know that I homeschool our daughter. She's 15. You know, she's been out of school for a long time. You know, we've gone against those kind of norms, but actually watching her be able to navigate even just her cycle, like you said, like for me it was the devil's curse. My mum called it that from day one, and it turned into such a nightmare, and I had a hysterectomy at 40 off the back of it, you know. And actually I look at her and she's just like she's just like, I walk in the room and I just know, because she's created a nest and she's in her nest, and like and she's got a hot water bottle, and I know she's not getting out of it, and I just have to pass food through into the bed. Do you know what I mean? But like, if that was me or she was at school, there would still be this expectation of get up, go to school, do PE, do all the things, you know, push your body, keep pushing your body, push it some more. And so yeah, I really hear like all of those internal structures and all of those ways that we've been brought up. And it's like, you know, we're sitting in a world, and I don't want this to get political, we won't get political anyway, but like we're sitting in a world that frankly is, I was going to say fucked, but you know, it is. It's like it's a messy world, and you know, we touched on patriarchal. Like it's like, of course, there's so much that stops us as women from gathering because together we're really freaking powerful. And so actually, you know, how many times have we been pitted against each other in systems and in corporate worlds and in jobs and in relationships and in, you know, where we're just constantly kept separate. And so I think that's what I really hear when you're sharing is like that decision that you made to really listen to yourself. Like as women, like we have something that men don't have, right? And that is this inner compass, our intuition, our wisdom. And that's not to say that all men don't have this connection to, but we have a womb and it holds our wisdom. Even those of us that don't have a womb anymore, it holds that inner wisdom. And we don't give enough credit to listening to it because we're still out there trying to earn enough money, keep the kids alive, you know, make sure everybody's fed, watered, and looked after, make sure the hoovering's done, you know. Like we've got so many aspects that are like these hidden things that you know, I love my husband, he's amazing, he's great, do you know what I mean? And he is still the provider in his mind. He goes out, he does the provision, he does the thing, and all of those other jobs that I do, I don't know where this came from, so we're just going to talk about it and follow the thread. All of those jobs that I do every day that are kind of just taken for granted because I'm the woman and I just get on and do them. And that's not to say, I remember him saying a little while ago, I'd love to stay at home and do those jobs, Laura, but someone needs to pay the rent, right? So even in this very untraditional kind of sense, there's still this ingrained system and there's still this ingrained part of him that feels the need to do that. And that keeps us again separate from our source because I'm not able to listen fully and truly to me because I'm still holding that like part of the family unit, you know. So I love that you, when you shared, like you stood in that same circle and you just knew like that actually you couldn't step back out of that into another aspect of the world. Like what I really hear there is you gave yourself the space to even hear the message. And that's the bit I think that we still miss. And that's one of the bits of Sacred Sister, as you know. It's like how, and Circle, it's why Circle is so profound. It's like, how can we give space to really listen, you know? Because without awareness, nothing changes, right?
Absolutely. There was something in me that took me to those words, and it's always listening to those messages. There's something in me that found the circle in the first place, or that brings me back to it. And now I'm really I think disciplined is the wrong word. It's just actually, I'm just really open to it. And I make sure that I'm giving myself those regular spaces so that I can tap into that deeper wisdom. Because so much of, following some of your threads back here, so much of what we do is that we keep moving really, really fast. And that's what we kind of are told to do. And I think it keeps us very disconnected from ourselves. And then, as you were saying as well, from other women. The power that comes through when women connect deeply to themselves and then each other and the land is just phenomenal. And I think that it's needed. I believe it's really needed because so much about the way that we live disconnects us from source. So I won't go too political. I love going political, but I won't go too political. But I think that what we can see is that we've come so far away from source that we're literally polluting Mother Earth that we rely upon for our existence. So we're causing so much harm because we're so disconnected, kept up here in the masculine, perhaps, moving fast, where when we bring it down, we connect deeply and root to ourselves. We have to get a lot of the stuff out the way. There's a whole healing journey to that as a process. But once we get rid of all of this stuff, we come in, we root in deeply to ourselves, and then we connect to other women, and particularly on the land, like a gathering. Oh my goodness, that's where the magic happens. It's where the power is.
Definitely.
See the grid light up.
Yeah, exactly. I started to talk a little while ago. Like we moved to this house in September, and out in the garden there's like some really big trees, and I can see them from my office. And I started to really consider, this tree doesn't look like this tree. And yet it's been planted next to each other, which means that it shares the same soil, it shares the same kind of air, but it doesn't complain about the other one. It doesn't tell it looks too big or it looks ugly or it's lost all its leaves, or it's like they just live next to each other and both are beautiful. But underneath the soil, like their roots will be intertwined. They will be woven together. And that analogy for me was like, it was a bit of a light bulb, and it was one of those moments of like, of course, duh, but that's what I see about women as well. It's like when we come into our heart space, my heart and my groundedness and my rootedness connects with your heart and grounded, and we begin to light up, and then we begin to, like you say, like you become a grid. And that's what happens when many women gather together, or many people gather together with shared heart intention. And we did our heart coherence the other week, and we met together in Weston-super-Mare, and these 80 women, many of them had never been in those spaces before. They were so brave to even step in, but every single one of them, we went around the circle before we started, and there, we just got people to do a one-word drop in, and it was like fear and curiosity, and at the end, everybody had gone through this transformation where they felt love, and they were grateful, and they felt connected, and they felt community, and like the words had just shifted. And so in that moment, it was like, even if it had been chaos at times in the afternoon, and we were all like, where are we at now? And the tech wasn't working, and everybody had gone through a shift. And actually, we could have just sat in that room for the afternoon and done nothing but connect with our hearts together, and it would have felt that way. And I think that is the power of what that brings. And so I guess the journey for me, watching you also unravel, like you say, through your family unit, through your through the way that you live, through your sexuality, through like all of that stuff, was a really big choice to make, and it's gone against the grain of most people. And actually, you've stepped in. So I don't know if you want to should we go there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we go? Tell me about your family.
Oh, my family is beautiful. Where do I even start? Let's start here. I have always known that I was queer, and in lots of ways, I was really lucky because I never had a question mark around it. And I don't know if a therapist once told me I have a really strong ego, a really strong sense of self that I've always come back to, whether it was because I grew up in a slightly different family. I've always just felt really comfortable in knowing that I am love and that I'm connecting in love. And that actually my queerness is that I connect with humans, as opposed to really looking at being a lesbian or bisexual. I actually just connect with humans. I would call it pansexual is the closest. So my first girlfriend, my first connection was a girl, and over time, I think, again, looking at this kind of external structures and the way that we're conditioned, I found that because I'm very feminine, I actually really connected with men quite deeply. So there was quite a long period of my life where I was really in longer term relationships with men. But just always knowing that there was this openness to me. So in my early 20s, I explored what I would have called it polyamory at the time, and just explored connections. That's always been the way that I am. And it's really beautiful. And I love that it's not always sexual as well. That's the other thing that I would say, is that it's about connecting. And sometimes I struggle to differentiate, like, what's a friend and what does that mean? And then we've got these different levels of friend, and we try and put names to things, and it kind of all gets a bit, So, yeah, I've always been very queer, but not really openly exploring my sexuality. And longer term relationships with men. I had my beautiful kids. And then more recently, I met Matto. And I wasn't supposed to meet Matto. I'd actually just come out of an extremely toxic relationship.
With a man or with a
With a
woman?
man.
Okay.
And I was absolutely determined that I wasn't going to get into another relationship. I'm a serial relationshipper. So I really
It's a hard one when you connect with people, isn't it? It's like, what, trying to differentiate, just to kind of come back a second, trying to differentiate, hearing you say about connection, it is that, like, I spend a lot of time going, I don't have friends. You're either in my circle or you're not in my circle, right? Because friendships, like you say, have all these different levels and different layers, and they all need something from you, and like they're all a bit too much. And it's like, so actually you're either in or you're not there yet, basically, is how I used to kind of describe things. But yeah, really that understanding. But I just want to come back one quick second to the label of queer, like, because I think when people listen to that, like, I grew up in a world where queer was a whole different, like, it was a whole different entity, right? Of like what was queer, like, you know. And so I think, like, I can see, and I got really, it was a big confusion for me with Sacred Sister, you know, when there was all these different labels, and I was like, shit, I'm going to get it wrong, right? Or, and actually, in reality, as long as you've had a womb, like, you're welcome in the space, right? That's the thing that holds us together as women. But tell me kind of what queer, like, means in terms of, like, how you, when you term yourself queer, what does that really mean?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like, you're talking about the words that we try to attribute to what is actually a spectrum.
Yeah.
So it can be, I think the power is in actually just claiming a word. So when I say queer, what I mean is that I'm not heteronormative. You know, I'm attracted to many people. That's why I also use pansexual. That's also another way of just saying I'm attracted to humans. So that means kind of I'm attracted, whether it's a trans man or a trans woman or a woman. That's where I feel, that's probably the closest word that I would use. But I love queer because it's kind of umbrella term. So I use it because it's actually just saying, try not to pigeonhole me too much. And it's a spectrum. So it's really about connection to that person. And keep going in terms of terminology. So the other one I would say is I'm demisexual as well. And these are just words that we try to attribute to something, right? And what that means is that I'm actually only attracted to people if I connect with them. So, you know, lots of people can kind of be attracted to film stars, and they'll go, oh, and it actually genuinely makes them feel very attracted in their bodies. I actually don't have that. So I actually have to really connect to someone before I feel any attraction. And I think the words are really helpful, but the most important thing is to actually just say, well, what does that mean for you? What does it mean for you? What does queer mean? And so thank you for
that. Because I just, when, you know, like, we've done this journey with Sacred Sister, and it's been like I just find the labels and the terminology so exhausting, because for me, humans are humans, and if we could just let go of some of that, like, how different would the world be if we could just accept each other as a human being, not a human doing, on this planet, like, you know, like, I guess this is part of it that's just like, if you look at the animal kingdom, right, like, they don't have all these labels, they just know, they meet up, and there's like, oh, there's a physical attraction there. Let's make babies, right? I mean I don't know, but I can
we check consent.
I can see you. I can feel that that's a very crass way of putting it, but it's like we are just another animal species, and yet the more evolved we've become, the more freaking complicated we've made it, And I think it's partly because people who don't necessarily identify as male or female, it feels to me like there's this, God, this is a big bloody open door, isn't it? It feels to me like without a label, they don't know where to put themselves in the invitation to of what someone calls them or how they, And I think that's the bit that I feel sad about, because it's like they've almost had to find a label to know how they fit into the normal world outside, whereas actually if we could just all be accepted in love, how amazing would that be?
As we show up. And the idea as well that that's fluid too. So things change. I change radically.
Totally.
I discover new parts of myself.
Yeah.
I think it can be very, I'm not trying to shy away from the political, but considering that the sexuality can be politicized, I think it's useful to look at an analogy with neurospicy.
Yeah.
So
I now call it neurosexy. I've decided it's my new term. Once you get past 50, it's like we're neurosexy now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
There's that whole journey, isn't there, where first of all you actually find something and you're like, oh wow, that actually fits me.
Yes.
So I think what you're talking about with, labels around sexuality, it's like, oh, there's other people like me. And actually this heteronormative society that we live in, which actually often shames that sexuality, it's so good to go, oh, there's other people who actually have this. And this word, I'm going to try it on and this actually fits me. And then, we go on journeys where actually we're like, oh, do we need to use that word so much? Actually, can I just make sure that I live in quite a bubble, and I know that the people that I mostly spend my time with accept me for who I am, rather than having to put a label on it. They're like actually genuinely curious, like, who are you? What does that mean to you? Let's get to a bit beneath. So I think it can be really helpful. It can be a good way of describing who you are to other people on an entry level.
Yeah.
And I think it can also be really important to use those labels as well, just to take away the heteronormative monopoly and the power dynamics. Because it is really normative, isn't it? So sometimes it's really helpful to a good number of queer people to go, yeah, we're queer and we're in a group and we've got this. And actually there's a good number of us. So there's that side to it as well.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for going there.
Thank you.